Nerd Reactor, roll out.
What's up, Reactorites? John here, and for this video, I want to talk about the Mandarin in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. This movie, I absolutely love this movie. It's definitely, for me, on my top 5 of MCU films. It's got I think, the best action, the best hand-to-hand fighting ever in the MCU, and it's all thanks to just the filmmakers being open with Destin Daniel Cretton teaming up with Brad Allen and other stunt people, and also Simu Liu just giving it his all. And he has been posting his behind the scenes stuff, his stunt work and choreography, working on the stuff. And if you see those videos, especially with him jumping on the bus and sliding on the side of the mirrors, and also his training with the actress that plays his sister, it's a recipe for greatness. And one of the best parts of the film is the Mandarin, played by Tony Leung. And this movie, we're finally getting the proper version of the iconic villain that is notable for being Iron Man's rival. And, we had the version in Iron Man 3, which was fake. It turns out to be Trevor Slattery, played by Sir Ben Kingsley. And so now we're here with the Shang-Chi movie. And for this video, I'll be talking about the different changes to the Mandarin character for the movie. Even though we're getting the villain this time, the movie still takes a lot of liberties with the character. So let's get on with the different changes to the Mandarin. And so with the Mandarin, it's a name that's been used in Iron Man 3 and also in the one-shot All Hail the King. And the Mandarin was used to great effect to scare the characters like the government, and also characters like Iron Man, like the Mandarin's coming, watch out, the Mandarin, the leader of the Ten Rings. And as it turns out, it was all facade. The actual Mandarin in Iron Man 3 was played by a character named Trevor, and it was the idea of Aldrich Killian, played by Guy Pearce, who the character just had beef with Iron Man just because he was embarrassed, and he wanted revenge against Tony Stark. With the All Hail the King, there was a character in that who infiltrates this prison that Trevor Slattery is in, because Trevor Slattery portrayed a terrorist. This character infiltrates the prison, takes out the bodyguards, pretty much just captures Trevor to bring him to the actual real Ten Rings organization with the real Mandarin. In the movie, in Shang-Chi and Legend of the Ten Rings, the Mandarin, his actual name is Wen Wu. So beware of spoilers if you're watching this. Wen Wu has a conversation with Shang-Chi and Katie and Xiaoling, and talks about how names are really important. And he jokes, or he just makes a comment about how they just chose the Mandarin name and he thought it was ridiculous. He was like, why would they name the Mandarin, the leader of the Ten Rings, after a dish? And yeah, when you really think about it, it is pretty silly. Like when I was younger, when I heard about the Mandarin, I didn't think much of it. It's like the Mandarin, it's just the language, a Chinese language for mainland China, and then they also use that in the Mandarin for a villain for Iron Man. And as an outsider, it's like, oh well, the Mandarin sounds cool, right? But if you're really a Chinese villain, you wouldn't really call yourself the Mandarin. It's like a villain from England deciding to call himself the English, or a villain in Spain decides to call himself the Spanish. I imagine a villain called the Spanish. Yeah, just imagine this character coming up to Iron Man. It's Iron Man, yo soy español. It's just sounds ridiculous. What's even more ridiculous is that the Mandarin, it's a term that was made by the Portuguese, so the actual Chinese wouldn't even use that word anyway. So yeah, China has many different dialects, languages, but there was one language, was it Putonghua, which means common speech. and so that's what they would call it for mainland China. And there's a whole different stuff with languages that's out there. And for a guy that lives in China to call himself the Mandarin would be silly, especially if it's also named after a duck. And it's also named after an orange. Imagine if the villain decides to call himself the Tangerine. I am the Tangerine. Fear me, Iron Man. Fear me, Shang-Chi. So in the movie, they changed his name from the Mandarin to his real name, Wen Wu, Su Wen Wu. But yeah, it was like a really, really interesting scene in the film that he talks about name and how it's important, and love that scene. And so the second thing that was changed were the 10 rings. And in the comic book version, the popular version are the 10 rings with each ring going onto each finger, and each ring has like a different power. And with these rings, you can use them like an ice blast. You can do like a fire blast. One ring, you can control a person's mind. And there's also a ring that can shoot out lightning. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, just imagine like just having these cool rings, shoot out lightning, fire, ice, control people, and all that. They're pretty cool rings. But with the Marvel Studios talked to director Destin Daniel Cretton, and with Destin and writer Dave Callahan, they changed the rings from the finger rings into arm rings, iron rings. And I think with this, it just fits the character, especially with his background. And the reason why Marvel Studios wanted it changed is because the rings, the Mandarin's rings in the comics, they're pretty similar to the Infinity Gauntlet from Thanos, where you have the stones on each side of the knuckle and the backside of the hand. And with the Mandarin rings, instead of like on the knuckles, you put the rings on the finger. But very similar, like they have different powers. With the stones, they have different powers, rings, different powers. So Marvel Studios wanted something different, and the filmmakers, took that opportunity to create something new. If you've seen movies like Kung Fu Hustle or the 36th Chamber of Shaolin, you'll see the influence with the rings here, especially with how Wen Wu uses them. Even though they're different with the powers, they're still cool, especially in the movie, the live action format, because these 10 rings can be used as a force field. It can be used as a whip. It can be used to enhance your strength and to punch things and to really hurt and, just wipe out somebody, wipe out a whole army. It's pretty crazy. If you see in the movie at the very end, the rings can be used to destroy a giant-ass creature. And I want to see what these rings can do in the future of the MCU. So another change for the Mandarin in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, the relationship between Shang-Chi, because Shang-Chi originally has a father in the comic book. It's Fu Manchu, but Marvel doesn't have the rights to it. And also the character has a lot of problematic origins, especially with the yellow peril stuff, with the Fu Manchu mustache, the long nails, just the history of just different actors playing the character. Oh, there was even one with Nick Cage playing a parody of Fu Manchu, which, Nick Cage, he can pull that off, a parody.
This is my mission!
There is the newer version for the comics where his real name is Zhang Zhu, so they're trying to change the name of Shang-Chi's father from Fu Manchu to something else. So with this one, Shang-Chi's father is Wen Wu, and also they made it so that the Mandarin has a kid, and that makes for, I think, an emotional story, a family story, where you can bring back a character like the Mandarin into this film and make him a central part of the story, while also introducing a new character with Shang-Chi. Just having them being related just really makes everything cohesive and interesting, especially with this tragic story, this broken family. Another change for the Mandarin, for Wen Wu in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is his motives. Usually, like in the comics, he's a bad guy. He wants to take over. He wants to amass riches. And we do get that in the beginning of Shang-Chi, where he just wants power. He's ruthless. He wants to form his organization, the Ten Rings. And that one, he's still got some similarities with the comic book version of Fu Manchu, who's powerful, who has an organization, who tricks, Shang-Chi into assassinating, and also with the Mandarin who wants power. But in this version, we get to see the family side, the softer side, a love story, and him kind of just being like a sympathetic villain or maybe an anti-hero, because he cares about his family during that time with his wife, and then when his wife was murdered, he wanted to seek revenge. So he went out to those people who have wronged him and taught them a lesson by killing them. And another change for Wen Wu is the way he looks, especially in the comics. The Mandarin is known to have either the Fu Manchu look, like in the earlier days, and then later on he would have the goatee, which is kind of similar to Tony Stark's look, which is fitting because the Mandarin is a rival to Tony Stark, and they both come from different areas. So Tony Stark in America, the Mandarin in China, they both have similar facial hair, and also there's one where they're wearing suits. The Mandarin's wearing a suit, and then you have Tony Stark who's wearing a suit, and they're both rich, so they're kind of like polar opposites of each other because one's a hero, the other's a villain. So for this version, for Shang-Chi, we still have Wen Wu. He does wear suits here and there, but he's different. He doesn't have like the goatee. He's clean shaven. He doesn't have the long nails. They're making a fresh look compared to the look of the Mandarin from the original days. So a very different look, very different. With this version, with Wen Wu, just he feels more relatable as this father figure, even though he's in charge of an evil organization. But there are parts where you're watching it and, man, I really feel sorry for this guy, and I can relate to like what he wants to do, like just being angry with things that are happening to his family, to his wife, and it's a tragic story. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like and subscribe and click that notification bell. With that said, I'm John, and I'll see you guys next time.